Ready to go?
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ian Rankin. Rankin, Edinburgh, and one of my other old favorite people, Linwood Barclay, who has come down from Toronto. They have a well-rehearsed, polished, and absolutely flawless act, right? So I can, for one, step aside and just turn this over.
See the dance part of it.
Oh, I love it. So I would like to say that Linwood is our writer-in-residence, Diana Gabaldon writer-residence at the Poison Pen, and he'll be teaching a writer's workshop on Sunday. But you don't have to be a writer to come. You can, because the subject is going to be, you have to use your microphone.
I was still trying to remember what it was. I'm gonna. Is it on? It's on. I'm gonna talk about
setting the hook.
Setting the hook. How to get somebody into a book. How finding that great what if that'll get people reading the whole thing. That's what we're gonna talk about.
So really, for readers, that can be extremely interesting. To sort of find out the magic behind the writing and so forth. So when we say it's a writer's workshop, I didn't want to discourage any of you who might find it interesting to hear how the magic goes, right? Ian, you are so modest, except on Twitter, when you have told us relentlessly all fall that you were #1 in the UK for how many damn weeks was it?
I was #1 for 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks, but I was in the top 10 for 14, which is I think that's a record for me. I'm pretty sure.
It was wonderful. I know. I keep up because our Twitter person, Susan, is faithful about following you. So every week there would be Ian going, oh, look, another week. Ian has so many awards that it's difficult to enumerate them. The Gold Dagger would certainly be one. The Diamond Dagger would be one. Then you have something, it doesn't let us call you Sir Ian, but it's a pretty honorary, cool thing, right?
No, I've got the Order of the British Empire,
That's
OBE. And that's two down. That's two down from being Sir.
Well, you still have time to work your way up the ladder. Okay, so with that, I'm going to step out of the way and have a good time.
Now, is this working? I don't think it is.
Take mine.
Take yours? Okay.
How's Ian's?
Yeah, mine's okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you're just OBE. I wasn't even going to come if you're just OBE. It was just simple. So Ian and I, we talked in November or October, one of those, back during the Toronto International Festival of Authors, and had a great chat. And I tried to talk Barbara into just running a tape of that up front, so we wouldn't even, it used to be fine. And even then, because this is probably I think this might be the 5th event we've actually done together, and the 3rd time I think I've interviewed you. And when I got to the second, I said, I'm tapped out. I got nothing left. But I was trying to. So I'm staying over at the Valley Ho, and they have the world's smallest notepads. So I jotted down possible things that I might still ask, or that we might talk about, some of which we might have talked about before. Because the pad is really tiny and the questions are short. But the first thing I want to ask was, of course, and I wanted to mention too the fact that I was going to offer congrats about how many weeks in England and the UK that your latest one was on. And was that kind of like, holy mackerel, I mean, I've been writing Rebus all this time, and now this one just sort of went crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's rungs of the ladder, and when I started getting published in the UK, they would publish me January, February, which was a very quiet time of year, on the understanding that you didn't have to sell nearly as many books to get in the top 10. And even so, it took me a long time to get to the top 10 being published January, February. And then you creep to later and later in the year, and the really big market is October to December when people are buying Christmas presents, Christmas gifts. And so that's when all the big hitters arrive. And so they said to me, look, we're going to start publishing you October, November. You may not get to #1 because you'll have Lee Child there, and you'll have Jeffrey Archer, and you'll have Stephen King and all that kind of stuff, George R.R. Martin. All these people will be publishing in October, but you'll sell more books. I mean, fine. Selling more books is great. Getting more readers is great. So, this time round the publisher was saying, Bernard Cornwell's got a book out. There might be a week that you get to #1 if you can beat him. And sure enough, I was there for a week, and then I got a second week, and they went, well, we weren't expecting that. And they certainly weren't expecting it to stick around in the top 10 for 14 weeks.
No.
which is pretty unprecedented for me. So they're all very happy. But then you go, you know this. You go, let's start again. That was fun while it lasted, and you're only as good as your last book, but you're also only as good as your next book. So luckily this tour, I shouldn't tell you this. This is supposed to be my year off. I'm not supposed to write a book this year. I've got a book every 2 years contract now. But I got a great idea in San Diego, which was the first stop on the tour. And I've kind of typed it to my phone, and I'm kind of mulling it over, and I think I can't start when I get back because I'm moving house, downsizing and selling my house and everything else. So I've got to get that out of the way. But maybe come the summer I might start to write a book that I'm not supposed to write. And yes, it's a Rebus book.
So was that the success for this in the House of Lies a sort of double-edged sword? And you thought, well, I can take a couple years off because nobody cares anymore. And then now they do, so you're stuck doing another one. So was there any sort of pressure from your publisher?
Come on, there's never any pressure, you know that, man. There's never any pressure from the publisher. There is. Of course, readers are going, when's the next one, when's the next one? And there's that lovely thing that's both really frustrating and also incredibly flattering, where people say, they're going to Twitter and they go, I loved it, when's the next one? And you go, wait a minute, it was published yesterday. Oh yeah, I read it in a day. How dare you? It took me months to write that book. How dare you read it in a day? Go back and reread it. Get nuances, the cultural this. Look at the quality of the writing. Don't just think about the plot, think about the richness of the prose. But of course it is flattering, I can't put your book down. That's what we all want. We all want that as writers. You love it as a reader when you start reading a book and you can't put it down. It's a fantastic thing, and it's not an easy thing to do, which is why I would love to be here to go to your event when you're giving your master class. Maybe get some tips. About how
I was hoping you'd be here.
I know. Frustratingly, I'm going to. When is it?
Well, it's perfectly timed. There's a Super Bowl on Sunday. Just before the Super Bowl, or it's at 1 o'clock. But we know the pre-show has already started. Probably going to be. It's just we'll tape it. We'll
You know what? Yeah, send it to me because I'll be thinking of you because I will be in Raleigh, North Carolina. And it's the one day off I've got the whole tour. I'm here for about 15 days, and the only day off I've got is the day in Raleigh. I said, why am I not doing anything in Raleigh? They said, it's Super Bowl Sunday, no bookstore wants you. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But yeah, so what was the question? I can't remember.
I don't know. Here.
Next one.
See the next page.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I was to say, because you said you had, when we talked the last couple of times, you were thinking the book a year treadmill is, it's okay for a while, but then after a while you think and you think, well, I think I would like to do one every 2 years, or I'll just write the next one when I feel like writing it, and that's fine. But when it starts to be that time where you don't have to write something, or you decide I'm going to take this route, do you find that you get kind of antsy and you think, can you, like you've told me one time that you're just perfectly fine going a few months without writing. Same here. But you finally reach a point where you think, I got to do something.
Well, you reach a point where you've got to do something, yeah. You can't just sit on your ass the whole time. I've tried. But no, there is something, I think there's something hardwired in us as writers. Writing is how we make sense of the world, it's how we communicate with the world, it's therapy, it's cathartic, it's fun, it keeps us childlike, because we're basically sitting in our bedrooms as kids, playing with our imaginary friends. So for all kinds of reasons that you come back to writing, even when you don't need to be writing, you come back to it because it's a fun thing to do.
And when you hear about writers retiring, it tends to be...
Who's retired?
Well, no, I was going to say, that's Alice Munro, when she was, 82 or whatever, she said, I think I've done it. Philip Roth, in his 80s, said, I'm written out, I'm done. But it seems to be that most writers write for just as long as they can. They don't decide, well, I'm 65, I'm going to hang it up, I'm done. Nobody does that, that I can see. And I think it's
because of all those reasons,
that's
probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like you know, it's the cliche, sharks have to keep swimming to stay alive, and we have to just keep writing because we don't know what else to do.
Yeah, no, I think there's something in that. And if if I ceased to be published or the books weren't selling anymore, I would still be writing because of all those things, because it's still fun to do, because it is therapeutic. It's my way of dealing with the world. Any big quandaries or questions I've got about the way the world is, ethics, morals, politics, you know, problems in society. The way I've always dealt with it is to create something from it, to create a fiction. And one of the problems I've got at the moment, as most fiction writers do, is you can't make this shit up. Wherever you live. You look at the States, you look at Europe, you look at Brexit, you look over there, you look over there, you go, I could not make this. Fiction, as this man knows, has to be credible. Fiction has to be believable, the real world does not.
And it's like, and if you were to write, and 5 years ago, if you were to write a novel that featured some of the current events that we're dealing with, you would have editors that say, well, that's ridiculous, it could never happen. And I mean, really, a reality star guy who really never did anything on his own without his dad's money becomes president. I mean, seriously, that can't happen. And so you think, yeah, that's a stupid idea. But it's. I mean, that's why I was going to ask you if in a House of Lies, if that's the parliamentary houses, and it's a book about Brexit.
Yeah, people have said that House of Lies must be the House of Parliament. Well, in Edinburgh, before they restructured the police in Scotland, the Edinburgh main police headquarters was always called the Big House. And the House of Lies in this book is the Big House. It's where every cop who worked there was lying at some point in their career. They were hiding something, they were covering something up, they were corrupt, they were venal, and they were keeping secrets. And we all do, to a greater or lesser extent, as human beings. We kind of operate by not always telling the whole truth to everybody we know. And so that was the House of Lies. I thought was that. But as by extension, it is any kind of huge corporate structure or political structure or social structure in which people are being misled. So fake news is a topic in this book. Mm-hmm. The fact that the police used to be able to run the narrative. You know, the powers that be could run the narrative. They could persuade you this is what's really happening, and you would take it in. And that's much harder to do now because people are looking and going, well, wait a minute, I don't trust you. I don't trust the powers that. This is why Brexit happened. Yeah. I don't trust politics as usual. I don't trust the powers that be. I don't trust people in authority.
Except then having cast that vote, it was the powers that be that had to figure out what to do about it, and they don't know what to do about it. I know, and it's a bizarre thing where still, I mean, 3 years into Brexit, we still don't know what it means. But by the end of March, it's going to mean something because we're going to have left Europe, and we'll either have left Europe with a deal or with no deal. No deal. I mean, you've probably heard some of these stories: stockpiling food, stockpiling medicines. We're not sure that any of the lorries will get across from Europe, from France, and a lot of our food comes in from France via Dover and Calais, the ports and the lorries going on ferries and stuff. The hard border between the south and north of Ireland could come back in, and if that comes back in, along with it comes terrorism. Hooray! Just when we thought we'd seen the back of that to a great degree. And it's chaos, which is why the one mention in the book of Brexit is two gangsters rubbing their hands in glee. Because they say, yes, we are disaster capitalists. We don't know what it means yet, but we will make money out of it. I mean, there was a story in the New York Times today, I think, of a company in England that makes some sort of, I don't know whether it was some sort of an industrial gadget or an air conditioner or whatever. And they are so worried they don't know what's going to happen that they're cranking them out like crazy right now and shipping them to Germany so they can work out of that. Work from that.
Yeah. And all these great cheerleaders for Brexit, all these hedge fund managers and people are moving their money to Europe. They're not. And Dyson, this guy Dyson who makes these vacuum cleaners, he was saying how great Brexit was going to be. He's moved his whole operation to Singapore. I mean, these people have just sold us a pup.
All I could think was that really sucks.
Yay! Yeah, you may not be the first person to use it. In fact, his vacuum cleaners aren't very good. So it doesn't suck that much.
Now you've had, in addition to writing the novels, more recently there's been theater. there's been plays.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. There's 2 now, isn't there?
I did a play a while ago, Dark Road, which wasn't Rebus. It was a cop. It was a female cop towards the end of her career, and there was some unfinished business. And I enjoyed that process. I worked with a playwright who's also a director, and we sort of put it together, or structured it, which was great because working on my own, I wouldn't have known how to go about it. You know, I had too many characters, too many scene changes, too many costume changes. Too many doors were needed to get people in and out of the stage. You know, things you don't think about when you're a novelist. Novelists are exceptionally lazy people. We've got as many words, as many pages as we need, as many scenes as we need, as many chapters as we need, as many characters as we need. When you're writing poetry, you're writing for the stage, and suddenly you've got these strictures. You've got to think in a very different way. Anyway, it was a hit. I only ever played outside the UK. The only place it played was Vancouver, which is kind of odd. But anyway. But it was a very complex production to put on. But then this producer came along and said, you know, I'd love to see Rebus on stage. Rebus and Cafferty, his nemesis, on stage. And I said, well, actually, yeah, me too. So again, I worked with a different playwright, and we came up with a story, Long Shadows, and it's Rebus and Cafferty on stage together, basically knocking bells out of each other, you know, but psychologically, not physically, because they're of a certain age now where they can't use their physicality anymore the way they used to. But games are being played between the 2 of them, and it was cast, and oddly it was cast, I say oddly, I was a bit surprised. The main actor they got to play Rebus is Irish, and he's in a soap opera in the UK called Coronation Street. He's called Charles Lawson, and the character in Coronation Street is called Big Jim McDonald. And the producer said, look, honestly, he can do a Scottish accent, don't worry about it. And physically, when I looked at the guy, I thought, yeah, he looks pretty good. Anyway, went and saw it at home to Birmingham last September, October, great. Came up to Edinburgh, saw my wife, my friends, all the reviewers were in this 2,000 seat theatre packed. First night, 20 minutes from the end, he keels over. The actor playing Rebus. He's had a stroke on stage. And so the lights go up, he gets taken away to hospital. Eventually the understudy comes on, reading from a script because he's not properly prepped. And they finished the play. He was away for 2 days, and he was back. I mean, phenomenal. That's, you know, the play must go on thing. Anyway, so he did it up till Christmas, and then he had to go off and do Coronation Street stuff, and theatres were saying, we want another run. So they've got another actor called, I'm going to blank his name now, Ron Donaghy, who plays Rebus on radio. So if you get the chance ever to hear a Rebus radio play, the BBC have done a lot of radio plays of the books. The guy playing Rebus on radio is Ron Donaghy. And so they started the run in Glasgow, and my wife went to see it 2 nights ago, took a couple of friends, and she texted me, so it was like 5 in the morning here, she texted me and she said, no, it wasn't 5 in the morning, it would have been the other way around, anyway, doesn't matter. But she texted me, she said, he's a bit tubby, but he made it to the end. When they say that art reviewing is dead, man, come on.
Would we know who plays Cafferty? Would we know this actor? I can always picture him in my head.
Yeah, I mean, the guy. I was really taken by the guy who plays Cafferty. John Stahl is his name, S-T-A-H-L, and he was in Game of Thrones. And as happens in Game of Thrones, he died. But in Game of Thrones, he's got long mane of hair, and in real life, for the play, he's got no hair at all. But again, in Edinburgh, when he walked on stage, my wife grabbed my arm because he was that lovely, potent mix of charm and menace. You know, he really got it, and he almost steals the show, or he certainly stole the show. When I saw him twice, and both nights I thought, wow. And then the actor playing Siobhan Clarke is quite a well-known film and TV actor called Kathy Tyson. She was in a film called Mona Lisa. With Bob Hoskins back in the day, one of Bob Hoskins' first movies. Yeah, one of his first movies, and she was a prostitute, and her pimp was Michael Caine, I think, and Bob Hoskins was the driver who was driving her around from between appointments, and they sort of built up a kind of friendship and stuff. And she's great, and she was really good as Siobhan. In fact, I thought when I watched the play, I thought, yet again, I've not given Siobhan Clarke enough to do. You know, we were so focused on these 2 guys that we kind of forgot that Siobhan Clarke is a really powerful character in her own right.
You think in the House of Lies that's the closest she's come to having her own book? Like she's really in that role a lot.
Yeah, you're right. And I hadn't really noticed it at the time when I was writing the book, but with Rebus no longer being a detective now, being retired and having health issues, yeah, I mean, she's got her own thing going on. And she, in the last couple of books, I think you've seen her kind of spread her wings, and it's been great to watch.
Okay, have you considered spinning her out and
Totally.
just doing?
Totally, I would love it, man. But
Yeah.
you know what it's like? You need to get a story that feels like her story.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I've failed to get a story that feels like this is hers and only hers. This one, for example, I mean, January. Apologies, because I know some of you have seen me here fairly recently, but January 2018, I had nothing except a deadline. The deadline was June. Went on vacation with my wife to St. Lucia, and thank God she took ill. So she was in bed with food poisoning for about a week, and I just sat and thought, well, I'll come up with the next book then. I might as well come up with the next book.
Isn't it great how things can work out?
Yeah. And so I just sat there. I'd actually taken my note. I'd taken a sort of a folder with me that's called Ian's Big Ideas folder, which has little clippings from newspapers and magazines and stuff. And there was this one clipping from Private Eye, ironically from Private Eye, or fittingly, a magazine which is a satirical but also hard news investigative magazine in the UK. And it was about a private detective who was investigating alleged links between corrupt senior police officers and organised crime. And he was found hacked to death in a London car park 30 years ago. And Private Eye, the magazine, keep coming back to it, and they won't let it go. And I just thought, interesting. I've never really written about private detectives. There's no real tradition of them in modern, well, no real tradition of them in the UK. We mostly go with cops rather than private eyes. And this notion of cops being linked to gangsters, I thought that's something from the past. It doesn't happen so much anymore in the UK. So, and then I thought, well, it happened 10 years ago. Oh, if it happened 10 years, so up until that point, this is Siobhan's book.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, oh, it happened 10 years ago. This guy's body has been in the trunk of his car for a decade. Rebus would have been a cop then. He might have been involved in the missing persons inquiry. So as well as a live murder inquiry in the present day, you've got a investigation into the original missing persons case to see if these cops were complicit, were hiding stuff, were telling lies, were covering up, etc., etc. So suddenly it became a Rebus novel, where it started life as a Siobhan Clarke novel.
And what did you say? What was it your wife had? Did you say food poison?
Yeah.
Was this a meal that you had prepared? You thought,
Yeah.
I really have to start another book.
I think it was on the plane out. I think it was on the airplane out, because it was literally as soon as we got to this beautiful resort in St. Lucia.
It's not fun.
No, I know you know that. I know you know that from touring. Trying to tour when you've got food poisoning, it's no fun either. But hey, have you got a story out of it? Yeah, because you won't get a story out of it.
Well,
Anything that happens to the writer is material for the writer. Come on.
So I just said to you before we came out, I said, when you get food poisoning on a book tour, and you think you write suspense, but nothing is as suspenseful.
Not too much detail, Linwood, please.
As talking in front of a group of people and hoping you'll get back to the hotel in time. It's like, don't buy my book. I don't need to sign. Just let me out of here. But and mentioning Cafferty, I think that a lot of us would probably agree that sometimes the most memorable characters in crime fiction are the bad guys, like a Cafferty, or like, and he's not really a bad guy, but like a Cletus Purcell in a Dave Robichaud novel. Cletus to me is one of the greatest characters in all of crime fiction. I love him so much because I really do love him, and he terrifies me.
Yeah.
But there was a writer whom we both immensely admire. It has a character who was some of the inspiration for Cafferty, correct?
Larry Block? Yeah. Lawrence Block, was one of the first American writers I read, or certainly one of the first American mystery writers that I read, and I just fell in love with the Scudder novels. And there's the character in there called Mick Ballou. Mick Ballou's like a kind of Irish thug, kind of mini gangster guy, and Cafferty came along as a homage for one book. He was only ever meant to be in one book as a homage to Mick Ballou. Homage is a word that writers use to mean stealing from. And so there was quite a lot of Mick Ballou physically in Cafferty, but he just became so much more. He became this. He became like Mr. Hyde to Rebus's Jekyll, or Cain and Abel, or Moriarty, or whatever. And you're never sure with Rebus and Cafferty if they're going to become best friends or kill each other. And I'm never sure when I start a book if one or both of them will be alive at the end, you know. And just recently, about 3 books ago, someone said to me, I like Cafferty, he's such a big, cuddly, huggable guy. And I went, I've not done my job properly. And it may have been my fault. Maybe I was starting to fall in love a little bit with the character. I think, I love this guy, I love writing about him. So there was empathy there that I shouldn't have allowed to enter the equation. A bit like Thomas Harris in Hannibal, where I think he just fell in love with the character too much and took all the edges off and made him less scary because he started to explain him. And so in the previous book to this, there's a scene, Rather Be the Devil, there's a scene where Cafferty can't resist a bargain, so buys 2 hammers in a hardware store, and then finds a use for each of them. And I thought, this is more like the guy that I want people to see. And he's kind of charismatic, but he should be terrifying. You shouldn't want to hug him.
No, but unless you're pleading to be spared. Now, you sort of answer this question, but do you envision that there will be a Rebus novel at some point where there's a kind of end game between those two?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I mean, I never think more than one book ahead, if that. And like all writers, I think I'm immortal. You know, I think I'm going to be around forever. I remember a long time ago saying to Pete, I think it must have been after Ruth Rendell. Was it after Ruth Rendell died? I can't remember. Anyway, I said to P.D. James once. I was doing an event with her, and I said, "Have you heard this rumor that Ruth Rendell's?" So no, it wasn't after she died. I said, "Have you heard this rumor that Ruth Rendell has a posthumous Inspector Wexford book that will be published after her death?" And at this point, P.D. James was in her 80s, and she said, "Oh, that sounds like quite a good idea. Maybe I should do one of those." And of course, she never did. She never did. And it turned out to be fake. When Ruth Rendell did die, I got in touch with her editor and said, "Look, is it true?" She went, "No, there's no Wexford book waiting for us." But I was just talking to Barbara about this. I mean, sad to report, but I've just had to write a kind of obituary / introduction to Philip Kerr's final book. His estate, his widow, and his publisher asked me if I would do it. It's a Bernie Gunter book, and it's set in the early days of Bernie's career as a cop. It's set in 1920s Berlin, and it's a great book. But it was a real double-edged thing to have to write it for a guy who was 62, I think, when he died, and who would never have thought he was near the end of Rankin by Bernie Gunter. The books were getting better and better. And suddenly he's gone and there will be no more. Except, again, as we also know, just because the writer's gone doesn't mean to say that the character goes. People are still writing about Sherlock Holmes. You know, the most famous Edinburgh crime character, doesn't matter how famous I get or Rebus gets, Conan Doyle's always going to be a much more famous writer. And he could, I don't think he would have ever invented Sherlock Holmes if he hadn't gone to Edinburgh University and had a certain lecturer.
Well, and there's this whole thing about, I mean, anybody can write Sherlock Holmes now because he's in the public domain, correct? So there's been enough years, I think it's at 70 years after the author's death, and you could do that. And that was actually something that came up in Canada about 3 years ago, because in Canada, the copyright thing is it's 50 years after an author's death, their works would be, their characters are public domain. And so that meant that in Canada, if one wanted to, one could write a James Bond novel. It was 50 years after the death of Ian Fleming, and you could do it as long as it were only published in Canada. And so there was about 3 weeks where I pondered it, and I thought, because I would love to do that, and I thought it's just for just the one country, it's just simply not worth it. It's not worth it really to do it. But the other, the more recent ones, I mean, you've got, you know, Robert B. Parker's estate. I mean, they've got Spencer novels and Jesse Stone, and now there's Sonny Randall. There's one, you know, those. But in those cases, there has to be the permission.
Yeah.
Because I always wondered, like, whether anyone would ever write like a Lou Archer or a Travis McGee. But I guess those are all tied up. Nobody's can do those.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's to do with the estate, right? So the estate of Ian Fleming will find writers to write them to keep the character going. I think probably the same with the estate of Chandler. I'd love somebody to say to me, do a James Bond, or I'm not sure I could do a Chandler. I've tried a couple of kind of American wisecracking private eye things, but only for short stories, and it's always fun. And in fact, I was in La Jolla a few days ago, and I was going to pay homage as usual. Whenever I'm in that part of the world, I pay homage to Chandler, because he was responsible for my first ever visit to the States. But the driver said, oh, they've remodeled the house. And I thought, I don't want to go and see a remodeled house. I want to remember it the way it was when I first saw it. Raymond Chandler's estate did this thing called the Chandler Fulbright Prize, and it was administered by Fulbright Foundation. And I went in for it 1 year and didn't win it. And then I went in for it a couple of years later and did win it. And they gave you 6 months in the States and $20,000. And that was the first time and I said to my wife, we were living in France at the time, and we were just poor as church mice. And I ran up to her and said, I've won the Chandler Fulbright, I've won the $20,000 when you go to the States for 6 months. And she went, is that line blue on that little thing there? And I went, yeah, I'm pregnant. So my dreams of driving across America in a 1950s Cadillac, wearing cowboy boots, smoking Marlboro, and everything else, having big adventures. We came with our 3-month-old son Jack, and we bought a VW bus, and we just stayed in motels, and But so from the age of 3 months to 9 months, Jack. So whenever my son Jack, who's now 26, says, yeah, I'd love to go and see the Statue of Liberty, I go, there's a photograph of you there, pal, with it.
Does that account for why, I think you told me that you have the Lego Volkswagen bus?
Yeah, that's why I've got the Lego Volkswagen.
I know you do.
Yeah, it's great. And I've got the Lego Yellow Submarine.
I've never seen that. You have a Lego Aston Martin now.
Oh.
The James Bond, the Aston Martin.
Does it have the ejector seat and everything?
Yes.
Oh.
It actually does.
For Christmas I nearly bought myself the Lego Ghostbusters headquarters, which is like $1,000, and it's thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces. But it was sold out, thank God.
No. I was looking at my wife. I think we bought the Ghostbusters, one of those for our future son-in-law to build. Or was it the Simpsons? It was the Quickie Mart, I think. It might have been
that's Simpsons then.
It was one of those.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Put away childish things, as they say. But this guy's got a model railway bigger than my apartment.
I used to tore it down. I like you. I moved.
Oh yeah.
But it's going to come back. I have a bigger room.
Here's a bizarre thing. Rebus lives and always has been in Arden Street in Edinburgh, which is not a neighbourhood he would realistically live in. It's all students. It's tenements, 4-story tenements, 19th century. So each floor of the tenement has maybe a couple of flats, a couple of apartments, maybe 3-bedroom. But it's a pretty student area. But he's always lived there because that's where I was staying when I wrote the first Rebus novel. I looked across the street and I just went, that's where he stays. Number 19, I think it is, 3 stories up. Cafferty lives in a lovely penthouse apartment in what's called Quarter Mile, which used to be the old infirmary, the old hospital in Edinburgh, and that's where I'm moving to in a couple of months. We're selling our big house and we're downsizing it into Cafferty's apartment.
Wouldn't it be awesome if there's actually a guy in that building who's, pretty much a Cafferty?
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
But I'll just be but I think that's really weird. I'm sure a psychoanalyst could make much of the fact that I've gone from being the hero in my books to the villain in my books. My personal trajectory has been to go from hero to villain.
Now, you mentioned a while ago how, writers think they're going to live forever and just keep on writing and let's hope that's true for you. But are there things that, this is sort of a two-part question, are there things that you have yet to do or achieve professionally, but also personally? Are there things is there still another rung on the ladder that you want to get to? Or do you feel like, I love what I'm doing, I'm just going to keep doing it, but is there something more that you want?
I would love for the books to be bigger sellers in the States, to climb up the New York Times chart a bit further than do currently, but there's not a lot that I've not done. I've done graphic novels and plays, and I've written song lyrics, and I've worked with musicians, and there's been documentaries, there's been this, there's been that. I'm not a very, it seems weird, I was going to say I'm not a very imaginative person. I'm not a very adventurous person. I'm happy as sitting in the Oxford Bar in Edinburgh in the back room, reading a newspaper or a book with a pint in front of me, wearing the same clothes I wore when I was a student. I put this shirt on especially for you guys. Right?
I was wondering if you wore the Canada shirt when we were in Toronto back this year.
Yeah, do you remember that? The Canada shirt.
That got a lot. You were so pandering. I mean, you just went to that. The whole house went nuts.
I know. Well, in my hotel room when I arrived in Toronto, someone had left a welcome pack, including a Canadian T-shirt. So I put the Canadian T-shirt on underneath my shirt, and then sort of ripped the shirt off. Not ripped the shirt off, obviously, but unbuttoned it carefully and neatly. But yeah, I know, cheap, easy laughs, right?
I know it was.
I wouldn't deign to do that with such an intelligent audience.
Well, you know, and you might just be the one exception to this thing that I've always believed to be true. And when I was at, there's the big annual massive conference of mystery writers and editors and all, and fans and stuff called BoucherCon that moves around the country and so forth. And I always find when I'm talking to other writers, and listen to what went wrong with this book or this didn't sell and I said, is it possible for writers to be happy? And you strike me as maybe the only one I know who maybe is. Yeah. I mean, I think. But there's always something else. It's like you feel it was like New York Times list.
I know. Well, I mean, but you say to novelists, would you rather be a musician? Yes. You say to musicians, would you rather be an actor? Yes. You say to actors, would you rather be an artist, a painter? Yes. You say to painters, would you rather be a musician? Yeah. And just nobody is entirely happy doing what they're doing. If you'd said to me, Ian, would you rather be in a successful rock band? Say when I was 18, 19, 20, successful rock band or a novelist, I'd have gone rock band, please. And a lot of us tried it. A lot of the writers I know tried it, and we just weren't very good at it. But I think I think writing is cathartic. It is therapeutic, and I think that means that people who deal with quite dark stuff, quite dark subject matter, and big, heavy moral themes and questions are fairly contented in themselves. And when you go to BoucherCon and you stand at the bar, all these writers are getting on fine, and they're all quite approachable, and they're having a laugh, because all the dark stuff's going out on the page. And which is why I always say the folk you've got to watch out for are the romantic fiction writers. Because they get none of that dark stuff out on the page. So they're all just seething masses of rage and frustration and everything else.
I thought you were going to say that all of there is the sort of the nasty serial killers and stuff are out there. If only they had been writers, they would never have had to go around and kill people for real. But the other thing is I think that's maybe this is true of all artists, is that you're never entirely happy with your own work. I mean, when I was talking, I was friends with a guy named Bruce McCall, who's a satirical writer and illustrator. He does a lot of covers for the New Yorker, and he's done stuff for them for years. And he does these hilarious and beautiful illustrations, satirical ones. He used to draw for National Lampoon years ago. And he said, and I thought this was just as applicable to writers, he said, I've never had an idea that was as good on paper, on the artboard, as it was in my head.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quotes up above my desk at home. I've got a kind of blank wall. There's a couple of quotes on there. One is Iris Murdoch, who was an English novelist, literary novelist, and it's every novel is the wreckage of a perfect idea. And when you get the idea, it's crystalline, it's perfect, it's going to be the greatest thing ever written, it's just beautiful. And then you start to write, and it starts to slip away from you. Words are imprecise, and you start to not quite be able to, which is why you have to do another book. You get again, it's to go from Iris Murdoch to Samuel Beckett, it's like, fail, try again, fail better, which is how he finishes one of his books. And you go, yeah, that's what I'm doing. If I'd written a perfect book, I could stop. I'd be quite happy. If I could say exactly what I want to say about the world in exactly the best possible way, I'd be happy and I could stop. But it hasn't happened yet. You get the idea, it's going to be brilliant, you do the first draft, you go, it's not great, but I can fix it. As soon as it comes out, you start looking at it, you go, oh, I could have done that differently, I would have done that differently, I could, it could always be better, which is why you start again. And, it's a learning process. Your whole life is a learning process.
Do you find that even now that there are times when you still learn with each book, that you think, like you?
That's why I want to come and see you. So I can get a few tips.
Everything could be solved if you only came and saw me on Sunday. Well, really, you've done. I think probably twice as many books as I have easily, but I find that I'll think, well, I won't make the mistake I made in that last book or the one before more, and I don't make that mistake, but I make a new one that I've never done before. And do you still find
Yeah, and every book, you know, there's something in it. I mean, a couple of books ago, there was this fraud case, and the fraud unit in police headquarters in Scotland were covering it. And I'd visited the police headquarters, and I'd talked to folk in the fraud squad. And then when I actually wrote the book and it was published, one of the people from the fraud squad said, actually, we wouldn't investigate that particular kind of case. Or if it's in Leeds in England would do it. I went, Jesus, well, then I wouldn't have a book. But you know, every book's got errors in it. It's got little mistakes in it, things that aren't quite right. And
do you love hearing from people who tell you there's a typo on page 421?
You know, I do quite like that.
Do you?
I go, how did that get through? There's a spelling mistake in this one. It's certainly in the UK edition. It's like it's the wrong character's name. It's the wrong character's name. And I'm going, how did I not spot that? First, second, third, fourth draft. How did Miranda, my wife, not spot it when she read it? How did the proofreader not spot it? How did my editor, my agent, not spot it?
So many eyes were on it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the big stuff that doesn't get noticed, you know? I don't know. My wife, Miranda, is my first editor. So she got this book in manuscript form. And she sits and she goes through it and I'm pacing backwards and forwards, or I'm looking around the kitchen door at her and stuff, and she's penciling the margins. Oh Christ, she's writing what she's writing now. And then she gives it back to me, and I take it up to my room, and I'm going through it and going straight to the marginalia to see what she's written. And it was things like, it's been a long time since Reba's fed the dog. If he's going to go to this part of town to ask some people some questions, couldn't he take the dog with him and take it for a walk? And I thought, why did I ever give him a dog? He didn't own a dog until 3 books ago. And then she'll say things like, that's an information dump. You've not properly explained why that character would do that. Psychologically, I don't feel they would. So it gets edited before it goes to my publisher. So the big fight begins when my editor at the publishing house says, I've got a few suggestions. And I go, whoa, I think you'll find this book's already been edited. You can make it different, but there's no way you can make it better.
My theory is that there's nothing worse than being an author's spouse. But I always think back to when, for years, I wrote a newspaper. I did 3 columns a week for the Toronto Star.
Yep.
And this is back, of course, when we had actual newspapers. And when the paper would come out, and my column would be there on the front section, and my wife is here, I would see when she got to it, and she'd be reading it. So then I would just watch while she read it. And if there was a little chuckle or a reaction or something, oh, that's great. The worst was when she got to the bottom and just turned the page. And I thought, uh-oh, don't ask. But it's true with books too, you know, and because I save mine until they're sort of in an ARC.